Hey everybody, C-Note here. Welcome to C-Note's Media Madness. Today we're going to talk a little bit about authenticity and the current status of it. I think a lot of people have been playing with authenticity in terms of describing it, trying to help other people with it in terms of coaching, and kind of turning it into an elitist thing a little bit. So let's talk about that today on C-Note's Media Madness. Let's go. Okay, so welcome to the show. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other. I hope business is well, and everything's going good. Everything's good here. I'm personally going through. I've been going through some financial issues, really for the last year. But honestly, I've been able to spend time working on my own, so it feels really good to be able to accomplish that. And this has been the longest that I've been out on my own, and a lot of it is thanks to authenticity. Now, authenticity is something that I've always had in some form, but when it comes to business, sometimes you can put on a little bit of a show. Like it's easy to do that, and sometimes learning is a matter of doing that, right? Sometimes you have to emulate other people to figure out your version of that. And I think that is the trouble that people have, is taking their learnings from trying to play with someone else's version of authenticity and translating into their own. It's taken me a long time to do that. It's taken me nearly 20 years to do that, to fully embrace it. And my style of authenticity is honestly sharing my perspective, caring about what I'm doing, and it's a lot of I language, which is not typically promoted in the business world. It's usually like talking about what your client needs and solving their problems and other people and building a community and doing other things. But for me, my version of authenticity is caring about myself and showing you what I've learned, and not necessarily telling you what to do, but giving you advice based on things that I've learned from my life. And that can be really tricky, because people talk about authenticity, but they also give advice based on things that they would do. So it's not necessarily authentic to completely just take someone's advice and do exactly what they would do, right? So it becomes a little bit tricky when you think about things that way. So I think about authenticity as a way to take the skills that you've developed by either faking it till you make it, being emulating someone else, or learning skills from someone else, or, being so good enough at your craft at some point that you can eventually start to put your personality into it. And the problem is that because there's this sense of elitism when it comes to this idea of authenticity, that we can, as people who are consulting, who are helping young designers, who are helping young people try to get into into this space of business, that we will sometimes tell them to be authentic when they don't even know what the authentic version of themselves actually is yet. They're not there. They don't know enough about themselves to be authentic. So they have to take a little bit of time to emulate someone else, to practice skills, to look at what other people are doing on YouTube, on different social platforms, to kind of figure out a little bit of what they want to be. And that's kind of where the challenge is, because after a certain point of emulating someone else, they start to feel that this isn't them, and other people start to feel and see that this isn't them. So over time, you have to translate that into your version of authenticity, right? So that becomes a challenge when it comes to recognizing that younger people don't necessarily know how to be authentic, because they don't have a barometer for what authentic is for them, and we can't necessarily berate them for that. We can't say that you shouldn't do this thing, you should be yourself, when they don't know what themselves actually are. So that becomes a tricky balance. It's really hard to talk about that. And I think what needs to be encouraged is that while they're developing skills, to think about what authenticity is to them, what it means to be themselves, and how they can still be themselves in a business context. Because again, completely being yourself, completely quote unquote being authentic, might not necessarily be business savvy. You know, if you're the type of person that is like throwing slurs all over the place, and I don't mean like every once in a while to be cute or doing it after you watched a Gary Vee video because it felt really good to curse. Like, I mean, if it's something where you're like throwing racial slurs around, if you're the type of person that is a little bit hurtful or hateful or doesn't have a filter, quote unquote, or anything like that, it can be a challenge for you to appeal to someone in a business-like manner because there are certain business expectations. You know, it's almost like you need to figure out what the minimum bar is for business correctness, as it were, and then find a way to coat that in your own dressing, as it were. You know what I mean? Like this salad, which is so sad because it has green beans in it. Like, who puts green beans in a salad? Trader Joe's, I'm coming for you. So, you know, it's tricky to talk about authenticity and really be honest and forthright about it. Because again, I think authenticity, ironically, is something that people kind of attach to and they preach without thinking about the details of it. So it can be this tricky thing to navigate, right? So we talk about authenticity as something you have to have, but I think it really depends on the stage of your career, what you're trying to do. If you're trying to fit into a community, you're going to have to kind of adapt to survive a little bit, right? So you're going to have to adjust a little bit to that community. But again, it's about not sacrificing your soul and sacrificing who you are. So that becomes a challenge. There's a lot of nuance. So, you know, even for me, as I've been developing my version of doing business, it involves videos like this, it involves podcasting, it involves doing stuff that is a little bit more indirectly people focused, because that is what works for me. My people energy gets drained. Like, I literally can have a 1 hour conversation with someone and I'm done for the entire day. I noticed that when I was doing interviews for my other podcast, dopamine.life, if you want to check that out. It's about mental health and mindset. When I was doing podcasting with guests, I found out that I was just drained the rest of the day. I couldn't focus. I didn't have energy. I wanted to like lay down and cry. I just couldn't handle it. And my people energy is it's unfortunately low. So I have to find ways to continue to do business and manage that. And the ways that I found out how to do that is to really look for and pre-qualify the kinds of clients that are cool enough to like just talk via Messenger or just do an initial real-time call or something on Skype or Zoom, and then kind of give me the trust and freedom to do what I need to do. Sometimes I'll send them videos instead of having to do a phone call every time. And that protects my energy because I can do videos like this all day and it's fine. Like, I don't feel like that drains anything because I'm talking to you guys, but I'm also, I'm here in my apartment by myself talking to myself like a lunatic. So it's totally fine for me to do that. But if I'm having a one-on-one conversation, I have to actively listen, and it's exhausting. And it's not that I don't want to listen to people or I don't care about people. It's just I need to protect my energy first and foremost. So for me, my identity, myself, is the most important thing that I care about. And that's what works for me. Some people are more naturally community and people focused, but I'm not going to start an email list. I'm not going to start a Facebook group because I just don't appeal to people in that kind of way. So podcasting for me is the way for me to connect with people. Videos like this is the way for me to connect with people, answering questions, communicating indirectly via Facebook or Facebook Messenger, Twitter, things like that. That has always worked so much better for me to build rapport, be able to think a little bit more about what I'm going to say. Because again, if I'm in real time, I'm in the moment, I might say something that is inappropriate or might not work or something like that. You know what I mean? So that's my version of authenticity, and it's been developing over time. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and it's really only the last year or so that I feel like I'm getting into my stride in terms of feeling good about the business that I'm doing. So it takes time, and don't let someone who is preaching authenticity drag you down if you're trying something new that is emulating someone's style. People do that when they talk about Gary Vee, and they start making fun of people who are trying to emulate Gary Vee. And certainly it's over time, it's like, okay, you got to find a way to get over that. But at first, if that's what gets them motivated, if that's what gets them going, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to look down on someone because they want to try to learn from experiencing what someone else experiences. So authenticity, again, I think the definition of that is taking all of the skills and things that you've learned over the years in terms of business and trying to find a nuanced way of approaching and embedding your personality into it without being so over the top and so alienating to your audience that it's just hurtful to be that way. But sometimes you can challenge expectations of yourself and others by being more yourself and applying yourself to business. I mean, that's what helps you stand out, right? But none of it matters if you don't have that skill set, that foundation. Honestly, for me, my dad is more of an extrovert, and he's definitely a people-focused type of person. And through learning, watching him, it's allowed me to be a little bit more of a people person. But when I am people person, it's turned up a lot, and it drains my energy a lot faster. The thing is, though, that it's allowed me to navigate business and the nuances of business much more seamlessly, because I learned that foundation. Even though it's not naturally my speed, I still have some of those skills that I can use and apply it to my authenticity, to who I am as a person. So again, it becomes like kind of a really tricky conversation if you're just blanketly throwing out there and saying you need to be authentic, because anyone who is trying to emulate someone else is not necessarily being inauthentic, they're learning. And them learning from someone else is an authentic experience, right? So I think the only way you can really be inauthentic is if you are 20 years into your career, maybe 10, and you are continuing to emulate someone else, and you're not applying your own personality to the things that you're doing over time. You're not attempting to. And you're just simply doing the same old tactics. And frankly, you're not going to survive in business if you do that. Unless you have a very, very good product and you don't need to be authentic. Honestly, authenticity really only applies to people who are doing individual kind of work, people who are doing individual business connections. If you are the CEO connecting with other CEOs or other people that are doing the big business connections, a real estate agent that is trying to connect with families, someone who's trying to do coaching and consulting. I would want someone to come to me for consulting if they liked who I was, because it makes it easier. The sell is easier, and I don't need to convince them of anything. That's the ultimate goal for me. I don't want to convince anyone of anything. And I think that should be the goal for you to have when you're exploring authenticity. When you're exploring applying your personality to your business, you're thinking about it as a qualifying phase. If you're a person that is that type of person who prefers to be a little bit more vulgar and use cursing to emphasize a point or things like that, that's going to be a qualifier point. The way that you speak about things, your honesty, sometimes bashing other people is going to be a part of it. I don't recommend it, but that could be a part of your shtick, and some people will like that. There are certain things you should and shouldn't do in terms of being a jerk or not being a jerk, but there are going to be aspects about your personality. You're going to share things about having a gaming aspect or some aspects of your personality, sharing a little bit of Dragon Ball stuff or things that you're into so that people get to know you, they get to know your style, your way of speaking, and they're already sold on you. Somebody could watch this and they can be like, hey, I like the way you talk. I like that you know things. I need a little bit of help with this. I have some mindset issues. I can't manage multiple clients. I'm having trouble with some design stuff. I'm having trouble with connecting with people. I'm an introvert. I don't know how to do business. Things like that. Those are things that people come to me for. So if they hear me talking about these topics, they know that that's something I can help them with in relation to directly to their direct story. So, that can be incredibly helpful to learn over time what makes you different, what stands out, about your message, about who you are, about how you can present yourself. Because again, I think a part of this authenticity movement, as it were, is in large part due to the increasing numbers of entrepreneurs in the country, in the US, and in the world. And understanding that being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily involve, being suited up in a business suit and tie and being super presentable, that there are simply more options. But at the same time, if somebody wants to wear a suit and tie and be that kind of person, that's a part of who they are, and we shouldn't bash that either. I want to wear a hoodie and a hat, and I'm great. I want to make a ton of money. I want to buy my house in a hoodie. I honestly do. And that fits me, but that doesn't give me permission, because I'm okay being a little bit more laissez-faire, doesn't give me permission to talk shit on someone who is, trying to emulate someone else or trying to be their version of someone else. If someone wants to be the next Oprah or the next Ryan Seacrest or the next Rachel Ray, they can totally strive towards that and start to apply their own version of who they are to that. But sometimes that's going to involve getting a little bit more dressed up. It's going to involve taking care of yourself, presenting yourself in a community in a certain way, not necessarily revealing all of your demons. It doesn't, vulnerability isn't a requirement to be authentic. It's sometimes nice. It's great to have people to get to know you, but that's a challenge for people. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to put all your mental health demons out there. It's been helpful for me because that is more of a natural integrated part of my life. It's something that I am comfortable talking about, but it doesn't mean authenticity requires you to do that. You can be in a suit and tie. You can totally present yourself in a certain way, and it can be who you are, as long as you feel natural in it. It's whatever you want to be. Being natural is, doing this, moving your arms left and right, being a little goofy. So, it's, whatever that means to you is totally fine. If you want to be buttoned up, if you want something to look a little bit more professional. For me, despite having, just a hat and a hoodie and being seemingly loose, I still prefer to have a nice camera, and I still have to have good audio. That is important to me. And being authentic doesn't necessarily mean low quality, right? So that's, it's about balance, about taking away and adding certain things that feels good to you. So for me, it's about, I need to have a good quality image. I need to have good audio. But in terms of my presentation, as long as I'm not, the most scraggly person, I'm fine. And I prefer to show myself as just a little bit looser in a hoodie and a hat, because that's just what I feel. But if somebody else feels like they feel better and can step up to the plate in a suit and tie, then let them have it. There's nothing wrong with that. That is all a part of the authentic game that we're in. So to kind of recap, essentially, if you're new to the game, if you're new to design, if you're new to media, if you're new to consulting and coaching, you're going to take a little bit of time to emulate someone else's style and figure out what style works for you, and then try to attach your personality to it. And understand that not every aspect of your personality is going to fit naturally into your business. You don't have to show everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's about figuring it out and tying things together and seeing what works for you. Again, that's all that matters is finding out what works for you, and then getting clients as a result of that. So that's it. That's all I got to say about authenticity. So if you want to check out my courses, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to message me here on Facebook, or if you're listening on Anchor, hit me up with a voice message on Anchor. You can also support the show or subscribe to the show at cnote.show, and then you can go check out my courses at cnote.media. I've got a podcast course and Myers-Briggs courses up there, and I'll also leave a link either up top or down below, depending on where you're listening to this or watching this, to my consulting. If you have any specific questions, or if you have any specific troubles that you're dealing with, we could totally talk one-on-one about that stuff. So with that, I hope you guys can be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to being authentic for yourself and for others. And it takes time, and it means that some aspects of who you are going to fit into certain business realms. It doesn't mean you're inauthentic if you're following skills and doing things that are working. for someone else as well. You can certainly be a little bit of someone else, but also work towards, including yourself into your style and the way that you're talking and the way that you're connecting with people. So with that, again, go to cnote.media to check out my courses and stuff. And that's it. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll catch you next time on C Note's Media Madness.